I got revenge on my entitled neighbor with gnomes. Years ago, I lived next to a neighbor who was the epitome of passive-aggressive. Let's call him Greg. Greg had an opinion on everything I did, how I parked my car, how I mowed my lawn, even the color of my trash cans. He once left me a note saying green clashed with the neighborhood aesthetic. It wasn't just me, either. Everyone on the block had some gripe about Greg. But the final straw came when I planted a small vegetable garden in my backyard. One morning, I woke up to find a note taped to my door: "Your garden is an eyesore. The Hoa will hear about this." Funny thing? Our neighborhood didn't even have an Hoa. Greg just made up rules and acted like the enforcer. Rather than confront him outright, I decided to have some fun. I bought the ugliest, most obnoxious garden gnome I could find: bright yellow hat, mismatched clothes, a giant grin. It was hideous, and I loved it. I placed it right at the edge of my garden where Greg could easily see it from his window. Greg's reaction was instant. The next day, there was another note: "Remove the gnome, or I'll file a complaint with the city." I ignored it. 2 days later, the gnome mysteriously disappeared. I laughed, knowing exactly who took it. But instead of confronting Greg, I doubled down. I bought 5 more gnomes. This time, I placed them in ridiculous poses, one climbing my fence, one hiding behind a bush, and so on. Over the next few weeks, Greg's frustration became palpable. He'd glare at me from his yard, muttering under his breath. He even tried to escalate things by calling city code enforcement, who, after visiting, confirmed there was absolutely nothing wrong with my garden or gnomes. Eventually, Greg snapped. One night, I caught him in the act of trying to steal one of my gnomes again. I stepped outside with a flashlight and said, "Need some help, Greg?" He froze, mumbled something about pests, and scurried back to his house. From that day on, Greg left me alone. And yes, the gnomes stayed.